Sonic Talk.
Hello everybody and welcome to Sonic Talk number 341. Today, what is the day? It's somewhere in December, isn't it? I can tell because the Christmas lights have gone up and everything, so it must be getting there. 4th of December, only just. Welcome everybody to another show. I want to say thank you very much for everybody joining us in the chat room. If you've not been here before, sonicstate.com/live at 4 p.m. UK time will bring you to a secret stream where you can, if you're lucky, like today, you might get the preview of a review that I'm doing. For instance, I've just played the chat room the preview of the Waldorf Pulse 2 review, which I've just finished, or I'm just finishing. But besides that, the chat room can help us with all sorts of, well, I call them our giant mega brain because they often, or turbo brain, I think it is, where they quite often help us on when I'm struggling for information at my fingertips. So welcome one and all. There's a live chat room and a live stream. Anyway, I've done that bit now. I want to say hello again. We've changed things up a little bit this week. I'm still back on, we've only got 3 guests because my laptop, while it's been in the shop for another week, they haven't found anything wrong with it, so they've just wiped all the software off it. So now when I get it back, I'm going to enjoy a weekend of trying to remember what I had installed on it, because what I've been doing for the last 3 machines is just doing a migration assistant. So I've just got tons of stuff that I probably can't find the serial numbers for anymore. Anyway, that's sort of beside the point. Let's introduce some guests. I think we'll start with Mr. Robbie Bronneman. There he is. He's got 2 N's in both parts of his name. Robbie Bronneman, of course, is in his lovely studio where you've been on tour with Howard Jones the last couple of times, because you did join us a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, no, been out was out last week and in rehearsals the week before. So yeah, it's kind of the culmination of a year's worth of work on a new album project and sort of presenting that. And it's Howard's 30th anniversary this year, so we did like a show with 3 sets. There was an acoustic set and the new album, and then a kind of hits and rarities set as well. So yeah, it's kind of been a long old slog, and it was great, and now it's kind of over. So
did you get to use your delicious bank of 8 launch pads then?
Yeah. I had a few issues with I had a real industrial strength 10-port USB hub, which worked fine in all the rehearsals. But it didn't like a couple of the venues' power, so there was a lot of frantic resetting of midstream. But it kind of, yeah.
Ouch. Well, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about stadiums later, because we have, in fact, we've got a topic which sort of is about that, so it'd be nice to talk to you about it. Anyway, we'll join our other guests now. We've also got Mr. Non-Eric over there from Muso Talk, who is like a German mirror image of me, but with hair. and talent.
That's a good one. I buy the thing with the hair. I buy that. Don't know about the rest.
Non-Eric Muso Talk, if you've not seen it, is basically it's like a German language equivalent of kind of the sort of thing that we do. We do the same sort of technology. We do live streaming video. It's all music technology, and but Mr. Non-Eric is based there in Berlin. And we're back in the back office today, then, are we? We've been ousted from your main studio.
No, I needed to sit down. I did my swim training was a bit too demanding today, so I like to sit.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Anyway, nice to have you aboard. And we'll go over to Bristol, where we've got Mr. Gaz Williams, GazWilliams.me, who's a music technologist, professional musician, producer, bass player. We look like you actually look like you're sat in the opposite corner of the same room to Non-Eric, but you're not.
I'm in the office today, so.
Are you back? Are you on the iPad again? Or are you on the iMac?
Yeah, this is the iPad. So yeah, it seems better than my laptop actually for connection and for
yeah,
video quality.
it's astonishing, isn't it? Anyway, nice to join you. I guess really first this week, because this is a topic that was kind of a bit off-piste, was the news of Cubase 7.5. Now, I've got a video to play, which I could play, which has kind of got the high points, or you could just dig right in, because I know that, Gaz, you're a Cubase user, or at least have been for quite some time, and also, Non-Eric, I know that you've had it in and did a special on it, so... I guess let me just play a little bit of this first, because that'll probably help kind of get the memory. What it looks like with Cubase 7.5 was announced probably 4 or 5 days ago, and it's got some pretty interesting stuff.
Or a group of tracks. Track versions work on audio, MIDI, instrument, chord, tempo, and signature tracks.
And these seem like sort of a different way of using playlists, but for all kinds of tracks.
But you can compare different audio edits, or even create chord track versions to audition completely different chord progressions for your song. Let's grab an audio track that already has a take on it.
Now, this looks like probably the biggest major feature. As I understand it, I am not a Cubase user anymore. I mean, I used to be many moons ago, but I am not so much now. I don't know. Robbie, are you a Cubase person at all, or are you kind of in the Logic world?
I kind of came through the route of the old Steinberg Pro 1224, that business started with Cubase, and was with Cubase for a while when it was offering better audio right at the beginning before Logic. Then I quickly switched to Logic, and I've been a Logic user ever since.
Well.
So about 4 years ago, I did try, because I was getting a bit frustrated with the kind of surround capabilities of Logic. So I bit the bullet and I got Cubase, the latest version at the time, and I sat in the studio with it for 4 days, and I thought, I just can't deal with this. I don't understand what I'm doing. It's taking time. I'm moving back to Logic. It's just
That's what you know. It's interesting though, because Cubase definitely has made a lot of big changes in probably the last 2 iterations. So, Hans, I think we'll go over to you, because you've probably studied it more recently and more in depth than certainly I have.
Well, yesterday we did a live stream with 2 beta testers and somebody, Helge, who is a product marketing manager from Steinberg, and went through a couple of the features. I think what is really nice about the 7.5 is the 0.5 iteration of the software, because most of the big DAW companies have now like a 2 or 3 year cycle where they just have major updates. And I prefer to have a little in-between update, get some new features, then the company can get some feedback on that and improve on it, whereas it's like eat or die, And as you mentioned, the track feature here, I think the playlist feature is great, but the one thing I don't like about it is that it only deals with the events on that track. So if you have plugins, or if you're using the inspector, what I sometimes do is I delay tracks for the feel, and then I'd like to quickly compare the different feel, and that wouldn't work because it doesn't also copy the inspector, which is like the playback parameters.
Okay. Well, that they neglected to mention that, and that's actually quite a big deal, isn't it? But I guess it was a marketing video. Gaz, have you had a chance to have a look as well? Maybe you can trade tips.
We're still downloading, right, Gaz? Just like me.
I'm still downloading it, yeah. I've been downloading it for the last 3 hours, I think. So I thought I was going to be coming on the show full of experience. I mean, it just became available at 2 p.m. Central European time. So
an hour ago.
And I've been trying to download
2 or 3 hours
since. 1 o'clock here, I think it was. And but there's some major things in this update. I've been having this dalliance with Logic recently, which I've been talking about, but I have to say I've gone off it again.
You're so fickle.
I know, it's terrible. But partly, I think the Logic audio engine isn't very good. I mean, you try and do certain things and it like soloing and it just seems to take an age to engage. And I don't know. There's definitely something a bit weird with Logic. But the Cubase things that I'm really looking forward to with this new version, definitely is playing around with the track version, specifically on the chord track. Now that I think looks like a really, really powerful feature. And just to explain that a little bit, when you've got a chord track in Cubase, then all your MIDI tracks, you can assign your MIDI tracks to follow the chord track. So if the chord track, so you could have multiple chord tracks. An example now might be you could have, sorry, I can't get my iPad in the right way.
There we go. He's all over the place. Need a better stand.
Yeah. You can get, like, say, you could have a bunch of chords. Like, let's just say a really easy G, C, and D chord progression. And all your MIDI tracks are following that chord progression. Then you could have an alternate track. Maybe that could be like a major key. Then you could have like an alternate chord track with the same chords, all in a minor key. So if you were working on a tune for maybe like a film or something, and the director was coming in, you could have different versions of the same tune with different types of chords, like moodier chords or happier chords, and just be able to, and just simply by toggling the track version of the chord track, it'll change the whole project. So potentially quite a powerful tool, I think. The other thing, which also should be, there's a bunch of stuff in this update. I know some people complain about a 0.5 being a paid update, and this is like a 49 euro.
49 euros.
Yeah. You get an awful lot for your money. There's one of the big things is the Groove Agent 4 looks very much like Machine. It looks like they've virtually copied Machine in so many ways, and have now got their own version of Machine running inside a Cubase. It's got so many features similar to Machine, so that's quite an interesting thing. There's an algorithmic reverb coming out as well, which
it sounds like I like the idea of what Hans was saying, Norit was saying about the idea of taking iteration, because Robbie, from our point of view as Logic users, we had to wait bloody years. But I guess that might suit you, because if you're working day and night on projects, you don't really want to cope with a major DAW upgrade, do you?
And to be honest with you, I've got Logic X, and I went through all the trauma of updating my system from Leopard to not Leopard, to Lion to Mountain Lion, and every time I come to a new project, I've got like a deadline, and I open Logic X and I go, oh no, it's not this project, I'm going to do it on the next project. So I've only really dabbled with it. I just feel like a total novice, because you go, where's that thing in that menu? Oh, it's gone from now. I just haven't got time. Right, move back to Logic 64, 9. But yeah, so I vowed that after Christmas, the first major project I do, I'll bite the bullet and get on with it.
Sorry, I was just getting Hans full screen again there. So his connection's been dropping a little bit. I think. Have you got any other stuff to add? Because obviously you've done a special. What was the big takeaway from the beta testers that you got from your special, Hans?
Well, obviously, what I was really interested in is a new drum plugin, which offers 12-bit vintage sounds and a built-in mixer. I think what really needs to be said is that Steinberg is doing a great job in trying to incorporate new workflow ideas and feedback from the user. But now it's already a pretty big program, and I think for them it's very, very hard to make it simpler, because you try to add stuff that helps the workflow, but if it at the same time it's another option, another click or another button, then at the end of the day you add a lot of complexity to it. But my feedback is why I'm just like Gas maybe coming back to Cubase is that after we did a lot of tests on DAWs with latency issues, input latency compensation problems, and other stuff, we found that Cubase is one of the most stable in the pack in all respects. And what is great, what I've think it's a problem for me, especially with Logic, is that the mixer only has, I think, 256 steps, so it's very crude in the way. And Steinberg has always been great automation, much better than Logic, for example. I think the Logic one is pretty old.
Yeah, well, we've been through that before. I just want to quickly, big hello to Rich Hilton is in the chat room. He's on the road with Chic. He's in Kuala Lumpur at the moment and Australia tomorrow, he says in the chat room, for 2 weeks. So yeah, I wouldn't mind being in Australia for 2 weeks from tomorrow because, frankly, the weather here's rubbish. And then I could just come back and go straight to Nam. That'd be lovely, rather than deal with all the Christmas stuff. Yes.
One last thing about Cubase I'd like to mention. I think a very good thing, and I'd like to see other DAWs follow suit, is the track visibility options, which is such an obvious idea, really. And what that is that you can... well, in fact, they introduced it first in Cubase 7 on the mixer, and now this applies in the arrangement page with the 7.5 update. And what that essentially means is that you can just select certain tracks and only have those tracks visible, and all the other tracks can kind of be just temporarily, so, and you can save those. So you could have just your drum tracks, or you could have just your vocal tracks, or whatever. And you can synchronize that with your mixer as well. So
that did look pretty nice, actually. That whole kind of workflow. It's almost like you can create the entire version history in one document there, rather than what I often do when I'm working, certainly in Logic. I don't know if you find the same thing, Robbie. You get to a certain point, you save, then you go on, and then you need to come back. And that grabbing that information and what have you is it can be a bit cumbersome. It's certainly easier in other DAWs. How do you tend to manage that, Robbie?
Well, I am really kind of I'm a real Virgo when it comes to working in Logic, and I try and just get rid of everything I don't need as I go, and I save I keep saving new versions of the project, so I've got old projects, so I tend to kind of housekeep totally the whole time as I go along. Everything's meticulously color coded and named and labeled, and so it's not so much of an issue for me.
But you would go back in. You have a versioning sort of system where you go, this song 0.6 means that. Yeah, so I see what you're saying. Yeah,
but there's another feature regarding visibility in there, and I don't know if you know about it, but it's great. You can actually choose to only display the tracks that are actively playing at a certain song position.
Oh, right. So it's dynamically changes.
Yes, which is great. You just have the stuff that's actually playing in your timeline, so it makes it much easier to find the stuff that you're hearing. I think that's great.
I mean, that sort of thing. I mean, for those of us who create massively complex arrangements, I know, Robbie, you did a couple of, a series of things when you were making your record, and you've got those screens which just go this enormous widescreen kind of look, and so there's a lot of real estate going on there. So I mean, anything that makes that easier has got to be useful. I mean, are those sort of things you would like to see in your DAW of choice as well? I mean, do you think Cubase are leading the pack a little bit here?
Well, that immediately appeals to me. Yeah, like you said, because sometimes when I'm working on tracks, I might have like anything upwards of like 200 tracks of stuff, even if there's only like one thing happening on it at one point of the track. So, having to scroll vast pages, horizontally and vertically, is always a bit of a pain, even with like a big 2-screen setup. So, I mean, yeah, that sounds like a great feature. One of the things Gaz said about the chord thing, I was wondering, does when that chord thing follow all your parts follow the chords? Do they change the inversions and everything as well dynamically? How does that work?
You can set each track's kind of inversions, and there's various presets. You can have them doing jazz inversions, or you can have them doing pop inversions. Pop chord voicings rather than inversions. It's a really nice feature, the chord track. It's very nice. And also you can have your monophonic audio tracks follow it too, which is cool. So you can sing over your one chord progression, change your chord progression, and then it'll automatically change your vocal track to follow your new chords.
That's pretty handy for a songwriting thing.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's really good, and it's really good fun when you start by putting like the most boring chord sequence in it, and then start messing around.
Do you get the opportunity to modify those rules to your own style, so you can set your own styles up, so that it'll put the sort of inversions that you tend to use into a chord track? So you've got a sort of you style, or is that asking too much? Because I mean, that sort of making them more poppy is all sort of smacks of Arranger keyboards a little bit, and I know how the panel feels about that. I know how Robbie feels about that specifically, and you know, spit nylon trousers, isn't it?
Gaz feels about that as well.
So can you?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think I'd have to open it up and have a look. You've got. Well, you can also make the chords voiced like piano or guitar as well. So there's a few. There's quite a bit you can do with it, but right. I don't think you can do what you're suggesting there.
There must be some sort of extra. I mean, I'm sure it's not an impossibility. Maybe for version 7.5.1. Who knows? Anyway, well, let's. You can get that now. I'm imagining their servers are getting hammered. How big's the download, Gaz? A couple of gigs?
7.9. No, 7.09.
Flipping heck. Gig. That's massive.
Yeah. I think partly that is because there's a new Halion.
Yeah, all the Halion stuff.
Well, actually, no, that's a separate download.
Yeah, another big one. But I think there's two things I'd still like to mention.
Sure, carry on.
There's this little neat feature called re-record.
Ah, yes, I saw that. So yeah,
which I think is great because I play a lot of guitar and I like to record one track in one take if possible. So I need to be able to re-record really quickly and just without losing the beat. And then I would like to ask the panel what they think of this VST Connect, which has also been upgraded, and you can now even do MIDI tracks via the internet. How do you see that? Because I don't know if you know, I've been involved in the company that developed the software initially. That was called Digital Musician, and they later sold the technology to Steinberg. And I was just wondering, do you think that could be a way a lot of people would be using
online collaborative, essentially?
Yeah.
Right.
That's something that's something I always dream about doing, because I've got all sorts of friends and producers and stuff all over the world. Particularly got a really good friend who's a producer who moved to Australia, and we quite often talk about how great it would be to be able to really properly collaborate on projects, as opposed to just having Skype open and commenting on stuff and all that kind of thing. So yeah, no, that kind of area really excites me.
Have you seen how it works? Because it actually works that there's a kind of 1 second offset. So if very hard to explain for me in English, but
so
you can actually record sample accurate to the other person's timeline by creating this 1 second general offset for both. It sort of gives you a pseudo kind of real-time recording capability, and then you can even goes as far as you can do a low bit rate direct transfer, and then once you like the take, in the background it will actually download the full res file for you. I think that's probably the closest we can get to something. And of course, there's a webcam and chat and everything.
Yeah, well, that sounds like the way to do it. That sounds like the way to do it. That sounds like a smart thing to do. I mean, it's been a bit of a holy grail, hasn't it? Because I know Bitvig are trying to do the same thing, and a lot of their sequence, when you boot up the sequencer, a lot of things are tied to the your internal IP and then the external server. And I mean, the demos I saw of that months ago, probably last year, probably. I don't know whether they're going to get that right, but it seems like that we're waiting to get that right. But it would be very useful for sure.
Home Studio brought it out as well, didn't they? They brought out that completely collaborative DAW.
Yeah, but I mean, that's fine. The thing about the Home Studio thing was the problem is they were inventing a DAW at the same time, which kind of felt like it's like, whoa, that's a lot of stuff. It's too much.
Yeah, I had to go at it, and it was that very thing. Really, I thought, wow, I just to learn another DAW was just too much. And then VST Connect came out pretty soon after that. So one thing that's quite nice with the VST Connect is, though, is essentially you can save presets of people and have like mates as VST plugins. You could just drop your mate in on a plugin.
Like a Nintendo Me or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I like the sound of that. Well, we must try that sometime. I mean, I haven't got Cubase here, but I know, Gaz, we were talking about doing stuff with Steinberg, trying to kind of get a little thing together, but we were waiting for some motivation from them, I think was a polite way of putting it. But anyway, you can get it. It's available now. And it does look to me like, because it does, like, you get these kind of head-to-heads with various DAWs, and it depends on what the development team are doing. And it seems like the Steinberg Cubase guys are really sort of pushing at the ceiling at the moment and kind of creating interesting and sort of smart ways to use DAWs. And again, but as Non-Eric said, the problem is with this is you can often end up in a situation where things get bloated. It's like, oh, if you right-click on this button, another menu can appear, and you end up with these sort of ridiculous amounts of sort of hidden functions and menu trees and all of that sort of stuff. But let's move on to our next topic.
Just one thing. Though,
okay, go.
What's the really last thing on this is,
Okay.
I think I'd like to talk about the 49 euros update price.
Yeah,
because
some people have been...
people complaining about that. And what are your feelings, Gus? Is it worth 49 euros? I'm sure.
Massively. I mean, you get like almost like a complete iteration of machine of it. Well, a brand new version of machine. You get a fantastic algorithmic reverb. You get like Halion Sonic 2, like a complete workstation. You get the stutter edit thing that what's it called? The loop mash effects. That looks cool. And
the reverb that was formerly by Viso.
Okay.
Sorry, didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, right, okay.
Can you do you remember the Viso verb that was out just a couple of months? And the guy who wrote the part of it is now working for Steinberg and is doing so. I'm really eager to hear the new reverb, actually.
Yeah, I'd like to check that out. It's getting compelling. I just haven't got any room for another DAW. I mean, I'm trying to beta test Bitwig as well. Well, I, to be honest, I haven't actually, but since my laptop's gone, because it's the one that's going to run it, hopefully I might get a chance to do that. But yes, DAW wars. It's almost like a religious global conflict, isn't it? It's the people are very sort of almost very pedestrian and stuck in their own ways, but so it has to be quite a compelling argument to jump ship and convert. Perhaps political parties rather than religions would be a bit less controversial. Anyway, let's take a look at our next topic, and this is the one about the Crickets choirs, and it's just quite interesting. This is a track by Jim Wilson. Let's see if I can get it to play, and it's God's Chorus of Crickets, it's called. Now, are you going to play for me? Come on. Excellent. No, that's awesome. Come on now. Right. So I seem to have no network there. Let me see if I can reload that. I'll talk amongst ourselves. Basically, the story of this is this guy called Jim Wilson, who created a track that he said was made exclusively from slowed down crickets and created this amazing sound. And it had this lovely sort of philosophical circular discussion about it, which was it was slowed down by the amount of times that cricket's metabolism is faster than humans, and then when they was slowed down, they sound like this. And it's quite Christmassy, actually. Unfortunately, he left the original crickets over the track at a massively high level, which was a little bit annoying.
They sound more stable.
There it goes. I won't play it all because it's not a very interesting musically track, but it was Dave Spears brought this one up. But honestly, I can't believe how people are so uppity about it. This is an original track from 1992, and then somebody obviously just sort of thought, I wonder if that's true. That's neat, and maybe it's easier for them to slow it down using like pull stretch or something like 800%. And there's this huge sort of argument that it can't possibly be done that way. I suppose whether or not it matters. What do you think? How would you do it? Because obviously, I think that basically that what they've said is there's been some people who've slowed things down. They think what there's actually done is he's sampled a tone from the slow bit and then pitched that and played that across. But it's one of these tracks which is it is as a relaxation kind of, you know, one of those ambient kind of albums where almost the description of what it is as important as the music itself. Have you ever done any of that sort of ambient stuff, Robbie?
Oh yeah, I mean, I love getting samples and totally mutilating them and slowing them right down and using granular engines and all that sort of thing. Yeah, so I was really intrigued by it.
It does sound beautiful, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
Do you think he? I mean, it sounds also fairly unlikely that it was actually just raw crickets, just kind of played and like, gosh, they're like a heavenly choir.
Yeah, I know. That's what I mean. I did have a little bit of kind of cynicism about that aspect of it. Whether that was a little bit tenuous, the kind of description of how it had been achieved, because it does seem like it's a great, you know, it's an absolute perfect cycle that keeps going around.
Yeah.
I mean, and it does, like you say, seem like it may be parts extracted and then kind of manipulated after the event, but it's quite a lot of people talking about it.
It appeals to our nature. We want it to be true, don't we?
Yeah.
I don't know if you do, Hans. You tell us the truth. Don't hold back. Hasn't got any guitars in.
Well, I mean, I'm only mildly excited. To put it mildly excited. I think it's the human being always likes to be excited about. We are very curious animals, you know. We like to stick our nose everywhere and find interesting stuff. But in the day-to-day sort of environment, I don't see. Well, I did one generative music on my modular synths once, just having things just play and almost sounded like crickets then, so we could do the reverse effect,
do
right?
the opposite direction, yeah. Well, that's what some people. There's this whole sort of. If you look here, there's this whole set of people who've kind of. What they've done is they've tried to take all these different sort of elements. They say, you know, this is what it sounds like. This is what it sounds like at. Just slow down. This is what it sounds like. Slow down even more. That's a bit more like it. And that's what it sounds like. Slow down even more, and even more, and even more. And then he said, and then what's great at this at the end, he says, look. Astonishing, he actually found the Hallelujah chorus in the crickets. That was by a guy called Dave Durango, who was obviously having a bit of a laugh with it. I've never really got. I mean, I like the idea of that general. I know Richard Devine does a lot of that, but it's more it's more glitchy than kind of ambient. I mean, you do, like you say, Robbie, you do a lot of granular stuff. I mean, do you find that you do that by hand, or are there specific plugins you like to use or instruments that you like to use? Obviously, you don't have to give away your trade secrets, but as many as possible.
I use I love the Camel Audio Alchemy.
Yes.
Yeah, and I also do it. My recent love is another plugin by is a virtual instrument called Granite, which is a granular virtual instrument.
I've not heard that yet.
I think a company called Sonic Arts, I think, make it. It's just standalone. It's a virtual instrument. You can get it as an AU, and I use that a lot as well. Really love that.
Well, that sounds lovely. I know, Gaz. Yeah. We've done a couple of things on the iPad that seem to handle granular very well. Are you still using those, or is it just a sort of flash in the pan?
Well, Sampler I'm obsessed with, and you can do a certain degree of granularity stuff with that. Something I have been playing around with, though, and sorry to come back to Cubase, but there is one in Cubase called Pad Shop, and that's actually really good, and I think doesn't seem to be making as many waves as perhaps it should do. And there is an upgrade to it, which I haven't got, which I'm going to look into to take it up to Pad Shop Pro. I think it's only a tenner to do that or something. But that's really nice. That's a really, really nicely laid out granular synth. And of course, Omnisphere, that's got a very nice granular mode in it, where it's got that really weird graphical interface. So as you start to play with the granularity, it starts to create this weird three-dimensional shape, which is quite fun. Yeah.
And then there's also Skype, which can give you some quite good granularity as well.
Borderlands on the iPad, another good one.
That's another good one.
Ooh,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Waiting for that to have your own
Needs
sample import.
Yeah, it
That
needs
would
a
be
bit of an
great.
update. Yeah.
Yes. Mm.
Right. Okay. Well, anyway, that was the cricket choir. That was kind of fun. And then now that we've got another. This is a bit more fun. This is the unpaid engineer. This is sent by Shakar Dane, who is a regular listener. I met him at the Mute Roundhouse gig it must have been a couple of years ago. Lovely chap, and he sent this one in. So let's see if this will play. Go. Be prepared for some really quite unpleasant vocals. And it really is hot.
Has been wasted. She said, I'm leaving you. And then she left and returned her head. I only wanted the best for us. But you were never there. No, you were never there. And I'm sitting here.
Oh, sorry, I can't say much more of that. That was the sort of hardcore. Well, I don't know what you call that kind of music. It's sort of
Crapcore.
Crapcore, yeah. Chap, local guy, local studio called. He was called Dan Atkinson. Dan's Lab Studios had kids, kids in the street. Obviously, sort of. Acquaintances, they came in and recorded not that music, but they never paid him, and he just got a bit hacked off about it. And there's actually quite a tearful story on the website. There's another video where he sort of said, I was in hospital with my wife, and my baby just been born, and it was all a bit stressful, and she was worried about money. And I just thought, you know what, I'm not doing this. So he went home and just thought he'd entertain himself and create a really crass dance remix to theirs, and it's got over 1 million hits. So they've got this massive amount of fame. He's the one who's getting all the ad revenue, hopefully. So and he's making T-shirts and stuff, and it's sort of rather backfired. And they. It just goes to show what power an engineer can have, and it's really nice that it's worked out. I just wondered whether anybody else has had one of those kind of moments where a client hasn't paid up, and you've come up with a really ingenious way to either embarrass them into it or force them to pay up without getting heavy and legal on their sorry arses. Hans.
Well,
no, Robbie, you look like you're ready there, ready to go in.
No, well, I have this very simple policy. Nobody gets anything from my studio till it's paid for.
So you just don't release the masters.
They just don't get anything, and it's all up front before I do a project with somebody. In fact, most projects with new artists or whatever, I ask for try and get most of it up front before we start, because it's just particularly when you're not working with big labels or you're working with independent people or whatever, you just don't know, and you hope they're coming to you because they know, the whole thing about we'll pay you at the end when we see what it's like shouldn't really apply. Because it's kind of that, extension of what we were talking before a couple of weeks ago. People hopefully come to you for what you do, and they know what you're going to do for them. So there has to be that kind of level of trust that you're going to do what you say you're going to do for them. So, yeah, so I totally eliminate that these days.
Oh, well, fair play. Do you have someone who handles that side of things so you can be the good cop rather than the bad cop and the good cop?
Yeah, I've got somebody who's who I use as an advisor, but I've just got very simple producer agreements that I give to people, and it all has to be signed up front, before I'll even go in the studio, and that's kind of worked really well because everybody knows where they stand.
Yeah, I think that's it, and also because the thing is you never know. I mean, obviously, you can be good at your own work, but if you're brought a song that's a bit of a donkey and they're expecting a sort of #1 worldwide smash, but you said it would be a worldwide smash kind of thing. I mean, you can't ever guarantee that kind of thing. So but the quality of your work would be consistent, no matter what. And Gaz, what about you?
Oh, I wish I was like Robbie. I'm a fool and I give out loads of stuff and don't get paid. So I listen to Robbie, everybody. Yeah, I'm very trusting, and sometimes that's bitten me on the bum. So it's probably a good idea to be a bit upfront about stuff, really.
Yeah, I mean, particularly when it's creative, isn't it? Because there's ego involved more than just sort of a straight transaction, and it's some people can handle creative rejection or creative modification well, and some people cannot. And if you say, you know, the process is part of the process is helping them get the best from what they've come up with, which might be, you know, giving them some advice that maybe don't do that so much, or that bit doesn't work. Some people just can't cope with that, and they use that as a reason to get uppity, and they go, well, I'm not paying because you said I was rubbish, kind of thing. But, you know, actually you were. I don't know, Hans, what do you do?
Well, I would say that Robbie reminds me of the good old Lunatic days, where I would only license to Italy, Spain, and the UK if I have the money already on my bank account, because there would be never any royalty checks or anything. So it had to be all up front in those countries. And one thing I would say is, I mean, what is the legal situation on this? Because the guy takes the original recording, not having been paid, releases this. He could get sued for doing this. And if he really wanted to hurt these guys, he should have produced a terrible, out-of-tune playback.
But the law is, isn't it? The law is that the person who owns the recording is the person who's paid for the recording. So therefore, if the band hasn't paid for it, they don't actually own it. It's not their intellectual property until they've actually paid for it.
Oh, is that true?
Yes, I would disagree, Robbie. I disagree.
Do you?
Yes, because even though their performance is still theirs, even if they never paid for the job of it being recorded. So am I totally wrong? That's my understanding.
No, I
can't release anything from anybody without a written agreement. Nothing. Not even a coughing.
That's why record labels own the masters, because they pay for the recording sessions.
But they don't own the song, though, do they? They only own the recording.
That's true. Yeah, they own that recording. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the difference. So I mean, if the guy had a publishing deal and he'd released it and was making money, because presumably 1.5 million hits, if it's got ad revenue, which I'm hoping it does, should generate him probably a couple of $1,000, I would have thought, which would at least cover. You'd think it would cover that session, for God's sake. Jesus, if it costs more than that, then it's not surprising they didn't pay. But you know, I'm sure that's not the case. So I'm hoping, you know, and he's selling T-shirts as well. So he's turned it round. He's kind of quite an enterprising guy, and he seems like quite a sweet dude.
The thing I like about it though is that that particular style of singing is so tiresome and rubbish. You know, it sort of shows that up, really, doesn't it? It shows up that when you strip away the kind of angsty guitar-y background and put a little sort of poppy thing, it makes the vocals just makes them just seem just hilariously bad. Now, I did a compilation album a few years ago of similar kind of music, and the thing was, every song, the vocals were in that sort of style. It was really tiresome to work on, but that kind of approach to singing, if you could call it that, is totally devoid of personality. It's like they're all just trying to do this, you know, angry monster man or whatever. And usually these, you know, and the kids quite often, and it's got nothing. It's got no emotional quality in it at all. It's just.
Well, it's probably easier to do that than it is to sing a beautiful ballad.
It is,
and also, you know, you got a lot of, you can get a lot of attitude out in that, I suppose, which is kind of what you do at that age.
But isn't it that the kids who love this kind of music will say, "Hey, you just don't get it, you old guys."
Yeah, well,
good.
Well, that's true. No, they may. But, what I found is I kept hearing, because that's the second or third time I've heard it, only because I've had to sort of sync it up and get the video and what have you. And I keep wanting to rearrange the vocals. Go, if you repeated that phrase, that wouldn't actually sound too bad, you know. And trying to make a chorus out of it. And it's like, no, stop. But I sort of can't help myself. And maybe that's my own problem. Well, it is.
But I was going to see Napalm Death back in 1988 as a 16-year-old or whatever. So I was there in the first kind of
first wave. Original.
Yeah, but so I can, you know, I've been in the mosh. You know, I'm not an old fuddy-duddy.
You've done your time.
I've done my time, and I can detect rubbish when I hear it. So yeah.
Sorry, non-Eric, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if we can still clarify the point about the legality of this, because from my understanding is if I take anybody's recording without a written permission, I cannot publish it, even if it's a phone call recording or somebody in my house or anything, let alone about the legality of the recording or the rights on the recording.
I think that might be specifically in German law. I don't know whether or not it's the case, because I mean, I suppose the thing is he took their likenesses as well, and they're pretty hot on video release forms in the States. Interesting. Maybe what would be horrible, obviously, is if they see, well, I reckon he made X amount of quid on the YouTube ads, so they'll get a no-win, no-fee guy, and they'll go after him because some shyster lawyer will go, oh, there's a case there. I hope that doesn't happen, because it just seems like this seems like a kind of open and close and a kind of nice bit of just desserts, and hopefully
I just want to warn.
Yes, before you start
doing
Germany,
it. Don't do that in Germany, because I know it's illegal. At least it's here, it's illegal.
There we go. Sonic Talks, legal advice, the council. Miled, I put it to you that yes. Anyway, no, we'll leave it there. But I'm not going to.
I just wanted to say I'm not distrusting of everybody I work with. Just to come across like that. But you know, I just think being upfront and having all that stuff sorted at the front puts everybody in a much more secure position, particularly on a project that might roll out.
It's also, Robbie, about when I do cooperation.
Yep. Sorry. Carry on.
Say that again.
Hello. Hello.
I think I have a break. My internet connections.
No, I can hear you. We can.
Okay.
Hear you.
Okay. Because I think I was interrupting Robbie there. Sorry.
No. Carry on. Carry on.
No, I was just thinking. I think it's a great advice from Robbie. You know, get that out of the door at the first thing as you can. You know, is there money? Will I be paid? Get that out of your mind. And what I also did is, if I did in the past when I did collaborations on a track, even though we just even hadn't really yet started, I was writing a small piece of paper just like this, you know, and just writing down the basics of the deal and signing it. And and I kept that, because later in 6 months, when it's either died or got really popular, everybody has a different vision on what was agreed at that point.
Yeah, well, and also, to be honest, quite often, if you're in a collaborative scenario, none of that stuff is even talked about, because you're just going to see what happens, and that's where it becomes grey and difficult, isn't it? Because almost, you know, in some respects, I think maybe you're fortunate in that respect, Robbie, because people come to you for a specific task or a specific kind of area of work, whereas if it's like, oh, come round, let's see what happens. By the way, if anything, and the first thing you do is say, right, I just want to get this out. It doesn't, you know, it might not. You might not get that song written that you thought you might have got written, or whatever it may be. But
But musicians
I think you shouldn't.
Sorry.
Shouldn't be scared in that situation. You know, people are reluctant to sort that shit out.
Yeah.
You know, at the beginning. But it gets more and more complicated later on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So get it done as early as you can, because then.
Yeah, I think that's a good advice. The earliest appropriate moment, perhaps, is the way to look at it. Yeah. Unpaid engineer. That was it. Oh yeah, this one. I like this, because this is gonna be this just sounded good. This is a video by a chap on YouTube. He's called Cooper Drummer, with 3s instead of E's, and he was in a marching band. He plays the drum kit.
All right.
And they're in the Georgia Dome, which looks like just a monstrously humongous stadium. I can give you some statistics on it later. And he just sort of wanted to check out what the reverb sound. Jesus Christ. Listen to that. And he's all right, because he's playing in time with the reverb there. And this just got me thinking, really. That's the Georgia Dome. That is basically, it seats 775,228 for football when it's full, or about 80,000 for concerts. Now, would any that basically that video means I would never ever go to a gig there that had anything other than maybe cricket in a God's cricket choir playing, because that would just be a complete nightmare. But what made me that is, have you ever been confronted with a venue like that? I mean, Robbie, you've done some stadium tours recently where it's just like, wow, how do you even decipher what the hell is going on?
Well, we have a really kind of strict policy when we're putting together stuff for gigs and for tours. We try and strip out anything that's just rubbish we don't need, and we try and keep things to their bare minimum. Just because we know the more you put in, when you're in those situations, you just lose all the detail and it all just sounds rubbish. So we're very disciplined about trying to keep the arrangements sparse and keeping the effects down on elements that are running and stuff, because like you say, as soon as you get into a big arena or something, it just sounds like a total mess.
And do you find that have you been played anywhere where it's almost impossible to hear what's going on just because of say an atmosphere like that, where the Georgia Dome, where it's just sort of coming back a second and a half later or whatever?
I did a gig in a swimming pool complex, big swimming pool complex, and needless to say, it was everything just sounded like a big 80s snare from a ballad by Heart or something. It was horrendous. Yeah, it was just awful. Yeah.
I mean, as a sound guy, I mean, coming up with that sort of stuff. In fact, Hans, I've got a story in Berlin. I did a gig in Berlin. I've probably told this story before. And there's a big disused transport depot, like a big bus station. I think it was in the eastern side or somewhere in between. It was absolutely, when I went in there, it was full of like 1950s and 60s coaches and buses, dusty. I mean, it was one of the largest concrete spaces I've ever been in. And we did it, I can't remember what it was called, and they set up like a PA in the middle of it with a kind of big wire that just went from some crummy generator. And the sound people just showed up and go, here you go. And literally it was like a pile of speakers, and I had to build it and tune it to the room, which was just, pointless. It was the bass drum and it just went it was a jazz funk band with 10 members. It was one of the worst sound experiences of my entire life. Needless to say, there was a power cut, which actually was a godsend as it happened. So yeah, not so bad. Gaz, you must have played in that sort of place. What do you do? I mean, when you're live, do you find because if you're not working with machines, do you find that you tend to gravitate towards the pre-delay tempo or divisions of it?
It is sometimes difficult when the front of house is really loud, so the reflection that's bouncing back off the wall and comes to the stage is louder than you're monitoring. That can make for quite a difficult.
Yeah, God, I can imagine.
Keeping the timing of that is sometimes a real problem. Yeah, I don't know. It's in the ear monitoring.
Yeah.
I guess that's the way to go. I mean, because you did quite a lot of gigs with Carl Hyde, which are going to be in big. Some of those were really big venues, but they've obviously been around the world a few times with Underworld, so they probably know which ones to avoid, rather than because there must be some real donkeys. There's the University Hall at Liverpool, which is just a giant marble container, which just sounds awful, and you try and avoid that, for instance.
We were fortunate to have the great John Newsham as our front of house engineer, and he's incredible. So he knows all the tricks of the trade, really. But I think having us in, we were all in ears, really. So for that particular tour,
it's a lot easier, right?
That was pretty cool. Yeah, we also had these Function One speakers on stage with us. The Underworld speakers, really, really lovely. So that gave us a more direct sound for the vibration, for that kind of bigness. But it is always a problem. It's absolutely is always a problem when you play those big venues.
Festivals. Just stick to festivals.
Yeah. And I think it's quite interesting, isn't it, that bands like U2, who've made their career of playing those massive venues, like Robbie was saying, they've managed to make their music. It just works in that sort of situation. relatively spacious music.
Well, do you think that was it? That span a whole genre. So we got what was it? The first real, well, it was probably the first real stadium band was Simple Minds, wasn't it? They were the ones that kind of, because everything just had tons of delay and echo on it anyway, and massive 80s snares. They're doing a stadium tour at the moment. I wonder what it's like actually for a band like that who are so you know their sound's built on these massive kind of venues where you start playing in little clubs and you just don't get that kind of stuff coming back. Must be a bit of a... Sorry,
little anechoic chamber.
Yeah,
Totally freak them out.
You just put you just have a. Can I just have a SPX 90 in line with my in-ear monitors, please? Yeah.
We did a gig the end of last year in Singapore. It was an outdoor gig, and it was on this. It was this big house, and it was kind of all the audience went up on an angle, and there was this ridiculous slapback from the PA across this where this house was, and we were all on in ears, which was fine, but some of the other bands were literally singing out of time because they couldn't deal with slapback. It was atrocious.
Oh,
yeah,
ghastly.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we have got some more topics, but actually time has marched on, so we might save those for another week, and perhaps we can come... Oh, sorry, Hans?
Nick, I did a show in an underground public garage, a huge one. So the ceiling was only this.
Right, okay.
And it's documented on YouTube. You can see it.
Well, send us a link, and we'll have a look at that. That sounds like great fun. Yeah, some of those spaces... It just don't work at all.
Oh, but we had to do a lot of shows at fairgrounds, you know, with big halls, like the Messe. These big halls on there, you know, when the trance and the techno was really, really big in Germany, they made so much, they could make so much money, they would book you anywhere, you know, big fairground halls. Rubbish sound, obviously. So the concentration in the drugs had to be a little bit higher, as usual.
Excellent. Just as long as you're near the bass line, or the bass drum, that's sort of, you know...
That should be fine, yes.
Yeah, it'll all be fine. Yeah, well, I used to work as a front of house engineer for a number of years, although it was a very small venue, but sometimes when confronted with something that was just such an alien... space, I just have no idea what to do, and you just think this is going to be awful, and we've just driven 4 hours to get here, we're not going to get home till 5 o'clock in the morning, and it's all for just a waste of time. So you just hope it's going to be a good vibey gig instead, you know, but you know that the band are going to be able to hear nothing in those situations. But I guess in-ears will help that an awful lot. So that's one good technological breakthrough. And I suppose, really, maybe flown systems, that's one way where they do kind of work better, because you get a more even dispersal, and you don't get like the stack that's just firing it back and coming in. So even though I do like the sound of stacks against a flown system, I'm old-fashioned like that. I like to feel a bit of pain. Anyway, well, I think that's it for this week. So I want to say thank you very much for everybody for joining us. A great, nice, fulsome chat room. If you want to check out any of the links or stuff mentioned in the show notes, there will be accompanying show notes when this is up live. Do come and visit us next week, 4 p.m. UK time. I think we might have a show or two in us before the Christmas break. 4 p.m. UK time. sonicstate.com/live. So we'll say goodbye to Mr. Non-Eric from musotalk.de. Go and check out his stuff, because even if you don't speak German, as I've said, if you're English or Anglo-Saxon, any kind of, then you get the gist of it. You know, it's actually not that hard to understand, and he makes
good
it so
German
simple.
course.
That's right, a great German course.
Advanced German course
That's
for
right.
musicians.
Anyway, thank you very much, Non-Eric, and we'll speak to you again soon. And also Mr. Robbie Bronneman at Robot Studios there, where he's waiting for the money, man. I didn't pay you up front. I pulled a fast one. No, well, thank you very much for joining us, Robbie. And are you kind of finished up before Christmas now, or you got a bit of a slow?
I got loads of things to do. I've got 2 or 3 projects that need finishing. So no rest for the wicked, as I said.
Couple of Christmas singles to mix, eh? That would be making it tight.
I've got this little synth that turned up today. Somebody sent me from Germany. It's the Ploytech synth, which it's got a MIDI socket.
Oh yes, excellent. That's in fact.
I'm looking forward to giving that a bit of a whirl.
That's funny. It's like a general MIDI chip with a bit of synth stuff in it, isn't it? You found that at Music Messer, Hans, didn't you? Yeah.
I think that's a good Christmas. That would be a great Christmas present.
Excellent. MIDI powered, isn't it? Actually, it's powered off MIDI too.
But be careful, guys. It only works with. It doesn't work because it's powered by MIDI. It doesn't work with all keyboards and MIDI connections. So you have to check the website if you own one of those MIDI devices that actually support it.
Power.
USB on it as well.
Sorry, what did you say there, Robbie? Missed that.
It's got a USB connector on it as well, which I presume you can power it from.
Oh, that's a new one then.
That's
the one that Method could. Yeah.
That's,
so they
that's the Mark II with the Curtis chips in, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's mine. Yeah, that's mine.
Right.
It's 12-note polyphony and all that. Yeah.
Brilliant. And also, Mr. Gaz Williams, gazwilliams.me with his... I like that look, actually, Gaz. You've got the mic up front. It looks very radio. Looks like late night with Letterman kind of vibe. Anyway.
Yeah, I've got. If anyone's interested in the Cubase 7.5 thing, I've got an update on my website. I've got a little feature with thoughts and musings about that, and I'm also going to put up a video later today if I manage to download it with a little tour around some of the new stuff. So that'll be. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That was Sonic Talk number 341. It's a wrap, and I can fade to black now. Or wipe.